Welcome to Higher Ed Live, the live weekly web show all about the world of higher education, where we're all about professional development, digital empowerment. Digital development, professional empowerment, we're all about all of it. We are here at a special day and time today. I am your host, Seth Odell, if you do not know. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. Special day, special time, making up for the fact that, well, we kind of had some technical difficulties on Sunday with our last broadcast. And thankfully, I've got our guests back. We're doing round two. And if you've noticed, round two is completely ad-free. That's right. Here at Higher Ed Live, we are happy to say today, finally, we are 100% ad-free via Ustream. That's right. We're going to be straight to the content. No more unnecessary interruptions. And because of that, I want to thank the people that made that happen. Guys, I seriously can't thank them enough. Integral. Huge thank you to Integral, the sponsors of Higher Ed Live. They're the creators of the Schools app on Facebook. Be sure to check out their webinar series about how they can help you leverage Facebook to increase yield and retention. That happens this Friday at 2 p.m. Eastern Time, and I'm going to send out a tweet right now with a link. But guys, please, honestly, take 1 second to thank Integral for helping to make Higher Ed Live completely ad-free. It's with their support that we're able to do this. I'm very, very grateful for their continued support. And we're not alone. They're not the only sponsors. I also want to take a quick second to shout out Omni Update, the leading web content management system, CMS provider for higher education. The company's web CMS OU campus is secure and scalable with great tools and features, deployment flexibility, and an awesome user community. In fact, it was the highest ranked CMS in customer satisfaction 2010 EDU Guru survey. So if you guys need a CMS, check out omniupdate.com. Again, another wonderful, wonderful sponsor of us here at Higher Ed Live. We are always so thankful for the folks that help make what we do possible. So, guys, we are here, special episode of Higher Ed Live. We're talking all about today about HD live streaming, mobile live streaming, scaling a live streaming platform, everything, whatever we can do. And I want to bring on the guest who's making all this possible, who's coming on for the second time. So let me pull him on right here. What's going on? This is right here is Blair Liikala from University of North Texas College of Music. I believe I did get that rather lengthy name correct. He's the director of recording services there. And he is, in my opinion, the biggest live streaming expert in higher ed right now. He's been on the show before, but it's been almost a year since he's been on the show, so I wanted to bring him back to talk about how his spring semester went, scaling his program. They've gone HD. They've had a lot of growth. And the fact is, guys, is the rest of us are trying to catch up and try and figure out what we can do with live streaming. It's always good to look at the folks that are farther ahead of the curve, and that's where Blair comes in. So first up, Blair, man, thank you so much for not only coming on the show, but coming on for the second time this week after Sunday's show kind of totally fell apart on us.
Well, things like that happen, but
yeah. Well, it had to be the show about live streaming where we ran into live streaming problems.
Had to be.
That exactly. That's the way it goes. But again, thanks so much for for coming on. I am going to whip through real quick before we get into all that. A little something I like to call the Weekly Five stories from around the world of higher education that are worth following, noting, or reading. And guys, definitely, if you have your own, let me know. These are coming in from Sunday, so there's a few stories that came out in the middle of this week that we're going to cover this Sunday, because guess what, we still have another episode this week. We're not slowing down now or ever. So let's dive right in and see what the Weekly 5 is going to be this week. First one, I got to give a little selfish plug in to say, guys, I don't know if you heard, I'm very happy to announce that I'm actually making a personal transitional move, moving from UCLA to Southern New Hampshire University. I'm leaving palm trees for snow. It's kind of a crazy decision, but in the process, dropped a little bit of a fun video out there, and I just want to thank the folks at SNHU for being cool with me doing that, for everyone that's said thank you and supported me over this. So I just want to give a quick thank you to everybody. I'm excited about my own personal, professional growths and changes, but that's not going to affect Higher Ed Live. That's what I wanted to bring up today. Nothing's changing, nothing's slowing down. We are continuing to build this ship as fast as possible. Next, Weekly 5. Great results from a new survey that shows why a mobile strategy includes both mobile web and apps. This is something a lot of folks know, but the numbers are pretty interesting. It's coming from Mobile and Higher Ed, Dave Olson, the man behind that. And just read this blog post, guys. Put it on your to-do list because this Sunday I'm bringing the man on himself. Dave Olson talked all about mobile and higher education. We're going to break down these numbers and look a lot farther beyond that. So if you haven't checked out that study yet, check it out. Really interesting information going on. In addition, other Weekly 5s that we got, just a nice article about how colleges are working to ease the stress of move-in day. When you look at the relationship an institution has with a student, a really pivotal point is move-in day. It's the time they physically come to campus. They're on campus with their parents. It's a very important day, and so it's really interesting to see what different schools are doing to make that day not only stress-free, but also fun. And I think it's a really important day, and if you're not capitalizing on it, you might be missing out a little bit. So definitely check out that article, see what your competition is doing, and maybe we can all take a couple notes. Next up, education giants SunGard and Datatel announced a merger. And this is a pretty big deal, guys. These companies are huge. So the question now is, what does this mean? They claim it's not going to affect the products they put out, but if you work with either of these companies, and if you don't, it's worth looking into, guys. I'm not so sure monopoly is ever a win for the client side of things. But again, maybe it could be. I think it's going to be very interesting to follow and see what happens with that merger. Big deal in that front, I think. And finally, guys, last one coming out for today. A study just shows that college graduates earn 84% more than high school grads. 84% more. That's pretty interesting. Now, I will say this. The study does not factor in the cost of student loans. So clearly, you might make 84% more, but how much more are you paying in loans, especially as student loan debt continues to rise at a very rapid rate. But this just brings up the point to me that clearly the value of a college degree is there's still a very real return on investment. So as we're talking about the future of our industry, are we going to get flattened? What's happening? What's changing? Clearly a degree is still incredibly valuable. Clearly the education is still valuable. I was still surprised, but 84% to me just seemed like a lot. So, again, interesting numbers to back up something that we all already knew. And finally, the unsolicited shout out of the week, where I shout any person, place, thing, or idea just because I can, because this is my show. This week's unsolicited shout out goes out to Instagram, the iPhone application that lets you take photos, throw on some filters, have a little bit of fun. I absolutely love it. Some people absolutely hate it. My question to you guys is, 1, do you love it or do you hate it? So let me know. And 2, is there anything brands can do with it? I'm surprised brands have not gotten on the Instagram bandwagon yet. I'm on there all the time. I check Instagram more than I check Twitter or Facebook. Crazy, I know. But it's interesting. And less than 2% of photos these days are getting printed out, so the quality issue doesn't matter much to me. I don't buy that argument if you're making it. But I'd love to hear what you guys think about that. So that's the unsolicited shout out of the week. That's the Weekly 5. Let's dive right into today's show, guys, because we're here to talk about live streaming. So I'm pulling Blair back up. Blair, again, thank you for coming on the show, man. Before we dive into anything else, if you could just do a little bit of recap. Some folks might not have seen the initial episode where you came on the show. Can you give us a brief synopsis of what your live streaming setup is, kind of the scope of the work that you guys do, so that people have kind of a background as we get into this conversation today?
Sure. Yeah. We started with a standard definition system that was in one of our largest concert halls, and it was used to make DVDs. I was approached by our wind department who wanted to stream. They have a large outside audience, and so we streamed to a couple websites first before we started internalizing it and doing it kind of on our own. So we turned this kind of standard definition live to DVD suite into a live to internet suite, and we combined the recording feed that we do all of our archive recordings with, try to tweak it. We ended up having a funding channel that gave us some dedicated funding to replace a lot of that stuff. So early on, we were able to renovate the audio side and get a dedicated mixer to do the stream with. So we had standard definition with really good audio. And we did that in the start of the fall of 2009 more. And it's just kind of continued, and we keep adding and keep adding. And then in the last October, we completed a renovation of a concert hall, about a 500-seater. And we've pulled all the cable for that room when the hall was being built, and then now lately we've gone in and completely finished that. So that kind of came online around the fall of 2010. Mm-hmm.
Now, being the College of Music, obviously what you guys are streaming is a lot of concerts. The scale of them is pretty amazing to me. I know that you guys, I think that you can correct me if I'm wrong, but it was last fall that you guys streamed, was it 30 events to over 100,000 viewers? Is that correct?
We started. I just had to calculate all those numbers. We did last academic semester. We did 60 concerts out of the big hall, and the season before that we did 30, since we were kind of adding them and taking it slow. So now it's between both semesters. It's about 60 out of the one hall, and we're anticipating about another 60 or 70 out of the smaller venue. Wow.
The scale of that's crazy, especially when talking about so many people in higher ed are trying to learn just how to live stream at all, the amount that you guys are doing now. I'm pulling up a quick graphic of your Watch Live page for your recording services. Can you just tell us a little bit so folks know that you guys, how you essentially set up streaming, that you stream both with Ustream and then you also stream as well on your own servers as well?
Right. Being a recording engineer, especially with anything live recording, there's got to be a backup. So when we were having conversations with our IT folks about how to set this up. They were kind of hesitant about us streaming a whole lot. So Plus, I didn't really know a lot about it at first. So what I started doing, we found Ustream. We also looked at Livestream and a couple of the others. For various reasons, we went with Ustream. At the time, it was actually mostly ad-free. That was almost two years ago. But I needed a happen with Ustream being such a new startup, or Livestream, something they're not working, that we had some sort of backup. We looked at Flash Media Server, and I also had there's Red 5 and Wowza Media Server, and we ended up going with Wowza just because it could hit the iPhone. And when we first started, it was the only one that could hit iOS, and at the time it wasn't even called iOS. But it could do the HTTP live packetizing that we needed to do. Packeting. Wow, I'm making words up. But the Wowza server also kind of allowed us to play with the bit rates. So when you first hit the website, the Ustream player pops up. That's like a 500 kilobyte a second stream. We don't adjust that because that's what Ustream recommends, and that's what also hits their iPhone app anyway, iPhone and iPad app. So we didn't want to mess with that too much. Even as we'll talk about switching with HD, we're not going to move that. But then our internal server, you have to click on to get, so not as many people watch it. So we've started to kind of play with it, and usually increasing the bit rate. Mm-hmm. So even with standard F, we wouldn't increase the pixel resolution, but we'd increase the bit rate so it was at least smoother and easier to watch, and it didn't have ads. Yeah. And we also have, Ustream has their iPhone app. We also have an iPhone stream. And there's one for the iPad and for the iPhone specifically. And
see, I love that, and that's something we're going to get into today as well, is watching on multiple devices, because more and more folks are doing that. And you have some interesting anecdotes. I hope folks watching guys stick with us, because the stuff that Blair has to say about watching on TVs is really, really interesting. So before we even move on a little bit more, just tell me briefly about the social setup you have to. I just want to make sure people understand the scope of that, because one of the cool things that you guys have, the stories, is by using Ustream, obviously you have the chat features, the hashtag features. So a lot of the same things we use here on HigherEdLive. Folks are seeing, I'm able to pull up your tweets and showcase them, but it's the same thing. People can have a dialogue. So there's this other layer, right, for viewers, that they can actually kind of interact, chat with each other, and have a kind of like a back channel conversation.
Right, and Ustream has had the live chat. We use that because it's built in. Some people, the one thing that I've noticed when we first embedded the Ustream player is that if you click on it a certain way, it takes you to the Ustream site. So I didn't want to start a separate chat. I've seen a lot of other colleges do that, and trying to have separate chats in our own chat. And no, we just do everything with Ustream. I know you had to create your own account, but oh well. Yeah. I thought it was an easier kind of user experience to do it that way. I know since we've first started, they've also done the social stream. So you've got the Facebook, Twitter aggregation thing going on. And so that's another tab that you can move over. We tried that for probably a month worth of streaming, and we really didn't get a whole lot of activity. So we pretty much stick to the live real-time chat. And with that, we've been able to do, a lot of things have happened. We've had prospective students jump on board, and they're talking with other players that are in other bands or other orchestras that are watching the other orchestra, and they're like, oh yeah, the string department's like this, or the wind department's like this, and here's what you have to do to apply. So it was a great kind of tool to talk to actual students while you're watching one of these performances. Mm-hmm. We've had several schools now have told me they've done like a band night. So our wind studies department has a really good outreach with a lot of the K-12 schools and bands, and especially like in rural Texas, not everyone has high-speed internet. The school does, so everyone will get together at the school, and they'll project it on a large projector for all the students that want to come and watch it. And of course, something like that's really cool. We've had composers on that talk about their piece if we're premiering it.
That's awesome.
We tend to premiere quite a number of pieces, so they'll come on and kind of talk about their piece. And of course, prospective parents, so we watch the chat, that's my daughter that's in the first row. We try and work in some sort of zoom into it. That's something we can do usually within a couple seconds of them asking. We'll try and zoom in on them.
I just gotta highlight that's one of the coolest examples of live stream I've ever heard of. Is that a parent can watch and say in the chat, my daughter plays the flute, she's in the third row, or we think here she is, and you guys will actually zoom the cameras in on this person, so a parent who's not there can watch. I can't stress enough what that means to a parent and the relationship as a marketer. I think the power of that is huge, that And the best part is you guys did all the legwork already. You're already live streaming. You already went this far. And that baby step further of like, let's just listen and let's kind of like have a little fun with this. I think that's a huge payoff to me, is that parents can watch a live stream and literally almost control the camera, ask you where to go, and you guys will go zoom in on their kid. And if they can't be there, they can watch them perform anyway. I just think I love that. That's the coolest thing ever.
It comes with its territory, because then the problem is do it again. It's like, well, we got to kind of balance things, especially with our large groups. Like if we're doing a large work that has orchestra and chorus, and there's 200 people up in the chorus, you can't quite get to everyone. So, I mean, that is a problem. But and of course, we'll definitely hear if we're not shooting a specific section enough too. So for some reason, however, our students do all the shooting. And however we do it, we never shoot the cellos enough. So I always get complaints about not enough cello, which is on the right side. So I don't know what that's about, but I mean.
Fair enough. Well, listen, before we move on to talking HD, which I wanted to pull up a question that we had come in, which is just, where do your archives live? Are they on your website, or are they branded, or do they have a branded page on Ustream? Like, essentially, where do you guys keep the recordings of this? So can you just talk briefly about your on-demand library and how you guys actually archive all these recordings?
Yeah, so when you start streaming, if you're going to start doing this, the number one comment you're going to get is, where can I watch it again? And we got flooded with it. And so the nice thing about Wowza is Wowza Media Server does both live streaming and on-demand streaming with all the different flavors that are out there. And so it was just kind of one step to do the on-demand library. And we use a CMS. I use Expression Engine, but you can use pretty much anything to post the live stream, and then that particular entry then becomes an on-demand entry. And through custom statuses, we can say, okay, it's being processed, and it's another part of our website. Because we're music, though, we have to watch the copyrights and permissions and things. So it's you have to authenticate to get into it. We do pull clips when we can get permissions from who we need to, but just to keep everyone happy, it's behind a login. But what it looks like on the back end is just a list of all of the events that we've recorded. You can sort, you can search, you can, of course, do all that things you would expect, and then you can play the video. And that on-demand library works on all the major devices. And then it's also, dynamic bitrate switching and all that stuff, so it's a nice, smooth experience.
Now, one thing that's changed since the last time we talked is that you guys have decided to upgrade and try and go HD with your live streaming. And I really want to talk about this because I just know that if anyone out here is watching, if you guys start talking about live streaming in your conference rooms, your deans and your directors are going to say, are we going to stream it in HD? And they're not really going to know what does that mean, but that's just like the thing people are going to ask. I know they're going to ask. So I want to put the question to the expert. What was it like, upgrading to HD? How does it work for you guys? I mean, let's dive into this topic a little bit, because I know that people are going to need to have this information when they have these conversations, because people are going to be asking all about it.
Right. First of all, it's expensive. You're going to get sticker shock. A lot of it, though, isn't expensive as it used to be. I also want to stress that the cameras being in HD is definitely one aspect of it, but it's one of many aspects. You need to consider still the quality of the lens, the type of lens. The lighting is always huge, and of course what you're shooting and how you're shooting is also equally important. HD will just kind of make everything look better. And the other thing with us is I was really just pushing it to get out of our standard def issues that we were starting to have. Since we expanded to this other hall just with one camera initially, we had to I really wanted to get that nice, crisp, better bitrate image, but then I had to balance that, and I had to incorporate some logic into how for the entire website, both the live and the on-demand system, to know if it was in standard def or in high def, and how to treat that. So it ended up getting kind of more. It just simplified our workflow simply to be in HD. Now, the one thing about digital technology especially is when you talk about HD, the first kind of thought is, well, it's going to look like it does on broadcast. And of course, most of that's lighting, most of that, they spend a lot of money to make it look like that. It's also relatively uncompressed, depending on if you've got cable, of course, or what your Metro broadcast network is doing. But over the internet, it's very, very compressed. And so you still have to realize that if you're watching something like Netflix, they've got several different files at several different bit rates, usually at the same pixel resolution, that will dynamically change based on your fluctuating internet connection. So when you've got your deans and administrators talking about HD, yes, no matter what you do, it will look better than standard def. Standard def is meant to be in a real small window if you really want it to look crisp. You can do the same thing with high def, and you may have to start out that way. But being able to capture more pixels allows the compressors more material to work with, and that gives you better image quality even if you're broadcasting at the same size window or with the same bit rate. So I'm anticipating, because we just did the high def upgrade the last 2 months in our kind of our flagship hall that we've been streaming out of, and like I said, with Ustream we're not going to change our bit rate, but you are going to see a definite quality difference between the standard def and the high def cameras, even though that the cameras are actually relatively similar. They're both the same product in the same product line. Just one was in standard def, one was in high def, but you will see a difference even at the same bit rate.
Mm-hmm. Now, just had a question come in. This is really interesting when we talk about HD, or you're talking about things. Now, I want to just dive a little bit farther in the fact that you're not increasing the bitrate, because the question that comes in is, how do users with a slower internet speed watch? Is there a way for them to downgrade? Like on YouTube, you can select the quality, so that way you can watch a lower quality video, so it loads quicker. Are there issues at all with that, with a user that has a slower internet speed, maybe dealing with a lot of buffering or anything?
Right, that's been something we've dealt with quite a bit too. I've got two answers because it's tackled almost the same way with live and with on-demand streaming. And we can do it with on-demand, but we can't do it yet with live. On on-demand, you just have to have multiple encoded files with keyframes aligned. So basically, keyframes are kind of your benchmark. It refreshes the entire frame. When you jump ahead, it has to find the closest keyframe and jump to it. And that's the only time that the video can switch. And that has to do with H.264 compression, and there's definitely that will go into major geek land if I get there. But that's relatively easy to do. You can do it out of pretty much any sort of compressor, whether that's squeeze or compressor or telestream. So that's tackled. We can do that. The switching and the bitrate detection and usually the frame rate ability, which translates into your CPU's power, that's all tackled by the Flash player, which is why a lot of video providers still love Flash, because of not only the ability to do all of these things like dynamic switching, but then also the DRM. And of course the iOS can do it too. It's a little more complicated and it takes a little more effort, even though it's actually simpler. But with live streaming, you have to do the same thing. You have to have several files that are keyframe aligned. The free version or the free Flash media encoder can do it. So you can select multiple bitrate files, and in that case, you would select one that's really low, something like, I wouldn't do anything probably lower than like 300 or 400 kilobits a second. It just won't be a very healthy experience. Even in that regard, we have an audio only, so that's how we tackle it. You can just listen to it if you're really having bandwidth problems. The 500 is our lowest one, which is from Ustream, and then it just goes up from there. I think our highest is in the 1500 range. But in order to do the live keyframe alignments, you have to have a hardware encoder if you don't use the Adobe software. Wirecast doesn't do it yet, and a couple of the other softwares don't do it yet. But the live encoders, the hardware encoders, like Digital Rapids, and there's the other one that I'm just blanking out on. They're really good. They're also really expensive, but that's really the only way to really get that quality image. So when you're watching things like live streams on like a professional broadcast, like the iTunes Music Festival, they definitely had a hardware encoder that was streaming multiple versions of the file at different bit rates. Usually, doubling the bit rates, starting from something like 400 or 500 and then going up.
And I'll just say too, regarding the speed issue, if you're like more of a single camera operation, I mean, obviously us here at HigherEdLive are a much smaller shop than something like UNT. You can live stream HD with Ustream. You have to pay, it's $100 additional if you buy Ustream's Producer Pro. It's like a desktop application that we use for our show. You can pay to do it, and we've fooled around with it, and we've just found that the quality difference is also just not drastically that noticeable. I mean, I just want to hammer home what Blair said, that if you want higher quality video, it comes down to production. It does come down to lighting and staging and camera movement, and all of those things, I found make much more of a difference in the quality of the video than when I switch HD to not HD on Ustream. So keep that in mind if you're more of a one-camera shop. Again, it's really about production basics first and foremost.
If you think about, if you want to put this into perspective, an Apple ProRes file that we track, which would be, as I guess at the moment, even a uncompressed 10-bit, you're talking about files for like an hour concert being 70, 80 gig or something like that, between ProRes or uncompressed. DVDs are 4.7, so you just went from like 80 to 4.7. Streaming, you're talking about kilobits a second, so you're going all the way down to, you're compressing it like 99%. So if you think about what's going on here, the fact that calling something streaming as an HD is kind of twisting what HD means. It's kind of like 3G with cell phones. It's not, you have to really look at it, and it's mostly because of that whole compression part. Pixel resolution compression is what makes things look better or worse. You increase the pixel size, you don't increase the bit rate, it's going to look pixely. Mm-hmm. So...
Yeah, very good point. So, okay, next question for you. This is the big one. You guys just went out and expanded into an entirely new concert hall recently. It's one of the big upgrades you guys had this spring. What is the process in that? How did that go? I just want to give people an idea because, this isn't something that just works in concerts. People need to think a little bit bigger that if you guys have your one mainstay lecture hall on campus, this needs to happen. We're redoing a room now in my school, and we are talking about, okay, how are we going to make sure that we can live stream out of here? How are we going to have multiple remote cameras? And the cost to entry actually is relatively low when you start in that. Now, you want to get higher, but, I mean, we're doing an entire room, for very, very low six figures. Didn't even need to hit six figures. You could do a room with remote cameras, streaming all set up, and a lot of people have that kind of one room on campus. And so while, yeah, you want to be able to rove around and do, you could have a one FireWire camera and a laptop and stream anywhere. You can make one room like really souped up. So this is definitely what you guys specialize in, is like souping up these concert halls. What was it like expanding most recently?
Going through a construction at a university is a very interesting experience in of itself. It's a fascinating thing you should read a book about. I think actually our process went really well. Most of actually the expansion was revolving around our live sound system and our recording system even before we were thinking about video. And with this particular hall, the way that the funding worked is we could build the hall, but it wasn't part of the funding for the sound system. And so we got that a little later as they were building the hall. So it was kind of a juggling act. The nice thing is when we're in the initial meeting, we didn't know we were going to be able to put a sound system in. So they asked us, what do we want? And we said conduit. And if there's anything anyone asks me about installing, especially into a renovated or a new space, just put lots and lots of conduit. And they'll probably put 1 inch. You don't want 1 inch, you want 2 or 3. And you want multiples of those. That's what we ended up putting in, just conduit everywhere. I think there's more conduit in this 500-seater than there is in our 1,000-seater. And it simply just makes life easier trying to move things around and making clean runs, things people don't see, don't trip on. So conduit, that's all I can really say about that.
And folks don't know, let's just jump in real quick. Tell them, what is conduit?
Pipes.
Okay, it's essentially it's piping that it's where you can put your cables together. So you avoid this. I'm going to pull up a quick photo snapshot of just insane cables that I snagged off of one of your sites just to showcase what you deal with and when you're running cable. And I mean, I know this all too well. I mean, I did an event last May where I was in an arena doing a live stream, and they didn't have conduit anywhere. And I'm literally like taping and running cable all over the place. And it's just, so essentially what you're talking about is building the framework so you have piping that's easy to not only keep cables together, but to change and upgrade things. Because the last thing you want to do is have it all set up and then have a cable die on you, and now you're trying to take the entire system apart.
And you have to, especially with installing things, as I said in the last show, our cameras are Pantel zoom cameras, and we do that because it keeps our labor costs down. There are some negatives, like it's a little jerky a little bit, and we can't move them around quite as smoothly. And we also have limited options on which cameras you can buy. But in the long run, especially in long run, I mean the 5 years that we anticipate having this, is just having one operator instead of having 5. And especially with our quantity, that was definitely an issue. But things like especially with conduit, and installing. These cameras take power, and you can't run extension cords, especially you're talking about public buildings. They have to be in conduits, so it helps in that case too that having a lot of this already there makes it easier to install it and makes your facilities department happy and things like that. Mm-hmm. Totally.
Now, let's shift gears for 1 second. I want to ask you about promotion. I mean, this is something that's still relatively new for you guys. So as you're ramping up this program, both initially and then just, again, whatever's most recent, how do you guys let folks know that you're streaming? I mean, what's the mindset behind, okay, we're already producing this content, now let's make sure we're connecting it to, all your prospective students, your parents, everything else. What kind of work do you guys do to make sure that people know of the caliber of live streams that are available to them to view?
My department specifically actually doesn't do a whole lot. We focus on making sure it works. The different divisions that are in the College of Music end up kind of pushing it and taking it on their own. It's everything from email blasts to it's posted all over a lot of their websites. It's posted on the College of Music homepage. A lot of our traffic comes from emails. About a third of our traffic comes from Facebook posts. And when I try to backtrack those, they end up coming from the wall, which I'm assuming means that they're relatively close to when the concert starts. So there's a lot of traffic there with Twitter and Facebook kind of right as the concert's starting. I'm in the concert hall. You can watch it live if you're not here at this link kind of stuff. And a lot of it now, especially now that we've been doing it for a while, a lot of people just know about it, and there's a lot of word of mouth starting to happen. So advertising isn't as getting the word out isn't quite as severe now that because we've been doing it for a while. We just have to make sure that the younger students that come in know about it, and a lot of them already do because they've been watching it already. So, but I mean, I know for the people that are starting out with something like this, or they're doing a new concert, or you're doing kind of a one-off, or things like graduations or commencements, just lots of links, making sure that the basics are covered. It'll show up on Google if you type in your college and live or graduation, that it shows up. And definitely, emails are actually still one of the largest referrals that we get, which is still kind of surprising to me. But
yeah, if it works. And I'll just throw one out there. Yeah, take advantage of the physical space. We live streamed. I live streamed from the Staymates Integrated Marketing Conference in Chicago a couple weeks ago, and you'd be surprised how much it helps us to tell the people in the room. People in the room that already have invested in coming want to share it with their friends. So, yeah, definitely let people know. And these things do kind of take off on their own. So I want to ask another question. We talked about HD, which I really think is going to be a continued buzzword for live streaming. People are going to ask about it. The other one that I'm sure if our viewers talk about live streaming in an office setting or in a meeting, people are going to say, what about mobile? What are people going to be able to watch it on their iPads or their cell phones? I mean, so let's talk mobile streaming. Is your stuff accessible with mobile devices, including tablets and that? What's your plans? What do you guys do in that arena?
I know our president of the university has an iPad, so I make sure it works on the iPad.
Smart.
And our dean of the College of Music, make sure you make it work on what your boss has. But yes. I mean, all of our stuff works across as many of the devices that I can keep track of. If most of the devices that are not Apple do Flash, and I guess that's how they work. And of course, we make sure that they work on iOS, and of course Android. So, I keep track of that. I try and make it work. It's just something that you always have to stay on top of. I mean, it's one of those things you do your best. And of course, the way that we make that work is through a website. We don't do an app. And those conversations started to come up, and we looked at what we do. And I don't know if anyone's actually tried to watch a movie on Netflix on your iPhone or your iPad. It's nice, I guess, if you're at work and you're trying to kill time or you're somewhere, but trying to watch an hour and a half or 2 hour piece of content that, if you're looking at classical music, isn't terribly gripping. And sound is, of course, really important too. So you look at some of these factors, and what we decided to do instead was to commission in a TV app instead. So smart TVs are definitely coming out. I have one, if you see that behind me. We installed several when we did this HD upgrade, and it's something that I've been paying attention to for quite a while. I've looked at an Apple TV, I've wanted it, but I don't like that it's closed source. You know, there's the Roku, there's the Google TV. There's a lot of these that are kind of starting to come up. There's rumors about Apple releasing a TV. So we wanted to kind of jump into that a little sooner with the type of content that we have. And really, I'm not making this up. I'm learning from Netflix, who's already doing it. So the nice thing about apps, though, when we went to look at it, that makes them, I guess, a little more better to start with, is that unlike iOS and Android, which are written in Objective-C, these are written in HTML5. So if you can code a website, you can code a TV app. You just got to read up on a little bit on the JavaScript side. So we wanted to at least start with it, see how it went, see if that's something that we could maintain. Of course, if it works well, there's PhoneGap that can turn it into an app. But I think for our type of experience and the music and the content that we have, sticking with mainly the on-demand library being accessible on the TVs is the way to go. And something I'd like to do in the future that we're still trying to work out is giving parents access to the on-demand archive. That's another big thing I've been getting pounded about. And for parents, instead of jumping on the computer, trying to, you know, honey, how do I hook the computer up to the TV? There's too many remotes to play with. They just grab the TV remote, open up the app, and they can surf it like they do Netflix. Just better experiences for them trying to get to it.
Now I don't have a smart TV. I just upgraded a new TV, not smart. So what does the TV app look like and work? I mean, is it the same thing as with your phone? I mean, on your TV you can pull up an application and access this stuff because your TV is hooked up to the internet, essentially?
Absolutely. The TVs have Wi-Fi, or they have a cable to them, and there's an app store. I mean, Samsung has a couple of videos that show you actually how it works, and they'll have, for my TV, I have a Vizio, and I mean, there's you hit the app button, and it shows you all the apps at the bottom, and of all the things that you've installed, and they're more like kind of a widget gadget thing. You know, they're not humongous. You're not really going to play games. Some of the Samsung, I mean, you can play Tetris on your TV with the Samsung apps, but essentially there's just kind of like a quick shortcut to get to it, and if you're using like the Yahoo SDK, which some of the TVs do, they'll have a little sidebar on the left that shows up first. It's nice for things like maps or checking the weather, things like that. While you're watching whatever you're watching, you can go to full screen, in which case it takes over the whole screen, and then you can navigate that way.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. I mean, I do think that it's a smart example of how you guys are kind of analyzing the content that you produce and where it fits best. Because you're right. I mean, I just don't see a lot of people watching a 2-hour-long concert on their phone necessarily. But I totally could see them sitting back in a living room and experiencing it in a similar fashion to where they are in the room and stuff. And I think that's interesting. I mean, this is the first example I've heard of anyone in higher ed getting into smart TVs. So I'm curious to see if other folks out there are doing it. So correct me, you might have already mentioned this, but where is that in the process? Are you guys still developing it? Is it out there and exists? What's the status of it?
We just started. It's a little beyond me, so I had to make some hires to make that happen. So we'll see how that goes. But it's something I'd like to do sooner than later. It's like anything that we've done, and especially with ramping up the amount of streaming that we're doing, it's probably going to take a little while. I would like to have something by December. So hopefully, maybe if everything goes well, which toss a coin if it does. I would like to see something like that. We do have several problems to get through because we still have to have it authenticated. So there's definitely security issues that will happen there, and getting the navigation, everything tweaked and working. And I think right away we've got some issues with the types of video and the specs that the TVs can play. We'll have to work on. So it's definitely something I'd like to keep exploring, and definitely something I like to do. But as far as the apps, you know, Android tablet apps and things like that, I mean, right now I think it's a lot of hype for something that we do, and it would just be an easier way. Instead of hitting your web browser, you're hitting an app, and that's really the only edge that we would have with that. And I mean, we could do it. There's companies that will do it for us for, you know, monthly fee or whatever, but I just don't see it being as you know, it's more of a, I'll watch it on occasion, and it's that app that I don't really open sort of deal. Mm-hmm. So
and I should clarify too that since you guys are using Ustream already does have a viewer app. So I mean, if folks want to use that, I mean, that's how a lot of folks are watching HigherEdLive. If they watch it on their iPad, for instance, There's already an application. It already is for you. So, I mean, they might miss out on the other stuff that's on your site, obviously the on-demand library, but if someone really wants to watch it live, they already have that option because of the fact that you guys do have that. We work with that platform. So that is a nice out-of-the-box, at least baby step. If I want to be able to watch on my iPad, okay, instantly, you can tell people. You can. You know, it's there as long as you're using Ustream. So, you guys, we're about wrapping up a little bit. If you have any questions or comments, please get them in. You know, Blair, I want to ask you, you guys have done a lot with live streaming, clearly. You guys are already working on smart TV stuff. You guys have made it work with for instance, with iPads because your boss is on it. You guys have done HD. You've scaled out and built rooms. You've built an on-demand library. You've done all these things that I am convinced are going to be on the docket for a lot of people coming up in the future. What are some lessons and final takeaways you can leave with the viewers? Just any kind of advice from your own experiences.
There's a lot of things. Conduit. Yeah, lots of conduit. No, it takes a lot of work. It really does. When I got to UNT, I didn't know what SDI was, and that's, I mean, our video protocol. So I mean, you started from the basics. I mean, I'm an audio engineer by trade. I don't do video, so I'm learning a lot of things as I go. Could some of our video quality be better? Probably, if I really knew more of what I was doing. You know, I guess when you look at streaming, we look at it as a broadcast, and so when we look at tools and upgrades, we look at it as a actual TV broadcast, and that puts a pretty large price tag and a lot of thought into what you're doing. I mean, you can do the simple streams, but I know something I mentioned when we talked the first time is the thing with HD, though, and especially high-quality productions, is you're going to have people watch longer. And we've definitely, through all of the stats, that is so evident that if you really want people to stick around for a while, it's got to be less gimmicky and more useful. You know, if you're doing a commencement ceremony and it's in standard def and it's pixely and it's zoomed out and you can't see the faces, it's boring. It's just a waste of time. You know, you need those multiple angles. You need to make it look like what people are used to watching on TV. You know, you watch anything that's on primetime TV right now, they've got a dozen cameras for something that we shoot with 3. So I guess just keep that in mind of would you watch this yourself? Can you sit through it on your own and watch it again? And if you can't, then you got to put more effort into it. So.
Mm-hmm. I agree. And I just want to say, you know, one of the things that my final takeaway would be with live stream, you guys know I'm a huge fan of it. Obviously, we have the live show every week, is that the barrier to entry is smaller than you think. You know, all you need to start, if you're doing campus events, is get a Firewire camera, get a laptop. Start there. I mean, you're going to grow. I totally agree. I mean, listen to Blair, like, be prepared to grow and make the experience better and better and better, but do it. I mean, the thing that boggles my mind in higher education sometimes is the amount of money we spend on putting on an event that can only be experienced by the amount of people sitting in the room. So you have 100 seats in the room, and you say, arguably, okay, well, if 100 people sit in this room, it's been worth every penny that we put into it. But you can open it up and have 1,000 people watching and spend almost no money to do that. Almost no money. So wouldn't you be increasing the reach of the event? But yet no one does it. And the reason no one does is because no one's being asked to yet. Your boss isn't asking you to live stream. You know what I mean? That's not, in higher education in general, it's not happening. And so what you're seeing places like the University of North Texas that's a high-end performance institution that is utilizing what's already happening and showcasing the world the talent they have. You know, these concerts were already happening. The people in the room were already enjoying them. They're not reinventing the wheel here. What they're really doing is taking an amazing on-campus experience and opening it up. That's really, really powerful, and I hope you guys understand the impact of that. I absolutely love that these concerts were already happening. They were already reaching a certain amount of people who, however, can sit in these concert halls, and the institution's very happy. This is totally worth it. You know, these kids are performing, everyone's happy, and now the parents that can't make it, now the perspectives that can't make it, you know, now the people that are composing the music that is being performed that can't make it can. And they're all part of it. I mean, this is a huge win on a community building level, on a marketing level, on a program level. I just love it. So I hope you guys get inspired by it. I'm inspired by it. I think it's really great. I mean, to take an event that's physical and to open it up so anyone can virtually be a part of it. And not just watch, but be able to use the stuff that UNT does where you can chat, you can have a conversation, you can be part of this is really powerful. And it's really, really cool. So Blair, thank you so much for coming on the show today, man. I really, really appreciate your time. I appreciate that this is round 2.
Round 2.
You came on Sunday and everything fell apart. So first, thank you so much, man, for coming on again and doing me a solid and coming on for a second time.
Yep, and again, if anyone has questions or comments or wants to talk about what you're trying to do, I mean, I love talking about it. I love finding people that are doing it. If if you are going to start streaming, I'd love to watch it. I've seen I know a lot of people that are doing it in other institutions, and so I definitely would love to get you connected with some of those people too and see what they're doing. So awesome.
Well, that's a huge offer. I hope you take them up on it. I know I'm going to. You haven't heard the last of me because I'm definitely going to take you up on that for sure. So listen, thank you, Blair, so much for coming on the show again. And guys, thank you so much for watching this special broadcast of Higher Ed Live at a special day and time. I want to really quickly once again thank our sponsors. Thank you to Omni Update, and also thank you to Integral. Integral is the reason why this broadcast and our future broadcasts are 100% ad-free on Ustream. So thank you to them for making that possible. So finally, guys, we're right back at it. 2 days, 3 days, this Sunday, Mobile and Higher Ed with Dave Olson, the man behind the blog, Mobile and Higher Ed. We got some new numbers, some new stats. Believe me, mobile is a big deal. You want to hear this conversation. Dave is the man to talk about it. We're really going to push the bar on, do you want to do, native apps, web apps, what's going on? What's the latest statistics, what people are using? It's going to be a lot of takeaways. So that's coming up this Sunday. So once again, guys, thank you for tuning in. Special day and time. Thank you to Blair. Thank you to our sponsors. And I hope I see you guys on Sunday. Take care.